One of the most important positions in the NFL is the cornerback position. We just saw the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots make their way to the championships, led by dominant secondaries with guys like Devon Witherspoon and Christian Gonzalez. So because every team is going to be looking for a cornerback this offseason, today I want to give you guys my top 10 cornerbacks in the 2026 NFL Draft. Hit the like and subscribe button if you're new and going to enjoy. Let's hop into it. And we are going to begin at number 10 with Julian Neal, the Arkansas corner. So before we go further into my list, I want to say I will have a few honorable mentions before I get to my number one. I'll give you guys a handful of guys that were close to making my list, but just did not make it for whatever reason. When it comes to Julian Neal, he's a pretty straightforward prospect. He's a big dude, 6'2", 208 pounds. Because he is a bigger dude, he's got great arm length, good size. He's one of the better run defenders in this class. I think he's a good enough athlete to get by. I wouldn't call him a special athlete. I do think his long speed is a bit of a concern. You see a lot of times where guys will get past him and he just doesn't have that speed to recover. But when he is in phase with you, when he is playing really aggressively, that's when he's at his best. I think he's got good movement skills, pretty solid hips. Again, I think coming downhill, playing to the line of scrimmage and being physical, that's like his best attribute. But he's also a bit of a work in progress in coverage. I think at times his footwork can get a little sloppy. You see some times where, maybe he's a little bit impatient. I think eye discipline is also an issue, specifically in zone coverage. And just in general, one play he's good, one play he makes a mistake. That's just kind of what Julian Neal is right now. But I do think the upside is there to be a legitimate, awesome player in the NFL. If he goes to the combine and has a really solid 40, I think Julian Neal is going to go a lot higher than the 10th best corner in this class. I think he'll probably be the 6th, maybe even 7th, or maybe even 5th cornerback off the board. I've heard some people say that some teams like Julian Neal more than some other guys that are on my list, and I can kind of understand why. I think a team will look at Julian Neal, call him a quote-unquote piece of clay, a moldable object, and they're going to form him into being what they want. It's very difficult to find a 6'2", 208 corner with that type of arm length, with that type of technique and film. I mean, on this big board in my top 10, he is the biggest cornerback, and he plays like it. So he's an intriguing prospect for sure. If my team took him, I'd be very happy, and I think your team would be too. Moving over to number 9, we have Chandler Rivers. So we just talked about Julian Neal, this long, lengthy, 6'2" corner. Chandler Rivers is kind of the opposite. 5'10", 185 pounds. And he kind of is what he is at this point. Chandler Rivers is not a high upside pick. You're getting somebody that, plug and play is not the right word, but he's not going to have this tremendous amount of room to grow. Like, he'll get better, he'll get, improve, he'll have more things to work on. But where I think Julian Neal might struggle at, there are some things that I think Chandler Rivers does excel at. A lot of what holds Chandler Rivers back are things that are kind of out of his control. Again, 5'10", 185. I think he's one of the smartest players in this class. He works so well in zone coverage. He jumps routes, sometimes a little too over aggressively, but he'll jump routes. He times it up well. He has versatility to play inside and outside. He knows when to trigger downhill, when to be aggressive. He knows when to, get in the player's way. I mean, he's just a really smart corner that can play in a lot of different roles, whether that is as a slot corner, which is what I think the NFL will probably use him as, or even at times on the outside. We saw him at the Senior Bowl. I thought he was... Listen, the Senior Bowl is not a great opportunity for most corners out there. It's very difficult to prove your worth, especially because you're playing with the guys that you've never played before. So communication, being as important as it is for the secondary, is a lot more difficult when the lingo for some guys is different than for other guys. I think Rivers is just the ultimate team player. I feel like he would fit in most second, in part because he is smaller. I think at the line of scrimmage, he's not the most physical guy in the world. I also think his press technique is just not the best. And I wouldn't call him a special athlete by no means. I think he's a good enough athlete, but special athlete, I think we'll save that term for some other guys on this list. But look, Chandler Rivers, again, he kind of is what he is. This is his PFF numbers here, and you can see it's not like he's taken big steps forward. He's kind of been the same guy every single year. Had a bit of a down year this year, but I still felt like he was really rock solid. But again, look at the numbers. 77.6, 90.7, 79.2. Like, this is not somebody that you're going to, come away with and say, yo, yeah, we're going to develop this guy for the next 3-4 years. He's going to be our CB1. But that's not the expectation for Chandler Rivers. The expectations for Rivers are different from Julian Neal. Julian Neal is a bit more of a riskier prospect, and for all we know, could end up not being very good. Chandler Rivers is a safer prospect that you know what you're getting from. Moving over to number 8, I have Chris Johnson, the San Diego State corner. So, man, honestly, before the Senior Bowl, I was a lot higher on Chris Johnson. I had Chris Johnson inside my top 5 corners, but I thought he was pretty bad at the Senior Bowl, and I think it exposed some of the flaws to his game. Now, start off with some of the pros of Chris Johnson real quick, because there's a lot to like about him. I think he's one of the best zone corners in this class. Like, he just has such great instinct, such a great feel for the game. He's a very fluid mover. He's not a great athlete. He's probably going to run somewhere in the 4.5s, which is a shame because he is not a big corner. He's a 6 foot, 188 to 190 corner, somewhere in that range, and he plays very light, meaning he's not going to be very physical at the line of scrimmage, which is a big flaw for him. But he is so good in zone. He moves so well. He's just not the fastest guy in the world. I think he has a great back pedal. He knows how to transition his hips well. He knows when to trigger downhill to try and force interceptions. We saw his productivity this year. I mean, he put up some ridiculous numbers. Granted, lesser competition, but still had a great season. Where you really start to see the flaws of Chris Johnson is when he has to play in sort of this physical one-on-one style, right? Which, I mean, let's be honest, in the NFL, you're not going to do a ton, but there are going to be occasions where you're one-on-one with an A.J. Brown, and A.J. Brown being as big and strong as he is, like, he will probably bully Chris Johnson. And we saw that a little bit at the Senior Bowl where, look, I thought Chris Johnson had a decent day 2 and day 3. I thought day 1 was a bit of a struggle, but I thought on day 2 he was a little bit better. But you did see sort of the limitations of him as a player in terms of, yeah, he might be able to shut you down on one play, but on other plays, man, like, he's just a very light player. He's not much of a run defender because he gets blocked very easily, but I will say he is a sure tackler. Like, he is also a willing tackler. It's just he's not going to get off a ton of blocks, which, again, in the NFL, you're talking about a very screen-heavy RPO game. Like, that's going to get after him a little bit. So just some general concerns about his lighter frame and his ability to handle more physical man coverage. But if you're a team that runs a lot of zone, I think that this guy would be perfect for your roster. If you're okay with a guy who may lack some, the physical elements of the game, but it's just a shutdown zone player who I think can survive it, man. I'm not saying he's going to get burnt every single play. I'm just saying that when he goes up against physical receivers, he might struggle a little bit if you're going to have him one-on-one. So maybe keep a safety over the top or something like that. I just think he's a good player, man. And right now he's at my number 8. There is a chance he'll move up my board depending on what he looks like at the combine. If he gets to the combine and either weighs in a little bit heavier and runs like a 4.5 flat, he might move up my board by 1 or 2 spots. If for now, after the Senior Bowl, was a little disappointed in Chris Johnson because I wanted to move him a little higher. But for now, we'll have to wait and see on him because I think he has a ton of talent. It just needs to be the right fit for him. Moving to my number 7, we got Keontae Scott. So Scott is a true slot corner. I think that will be what his game will be at the in the NFL level, is a true physical slot corner. But that's really what I like about his game. I really like the fact that he plays with sort of a fire, a sort of intensity that, triggers downhill, will put a pop on some people, isn't afraid to take a risk to force a turnover. He's a smart football player that, again, in the slot, right? So for some teams, some teams might prefer a lighter slot who can handle a bit more speed to match the Wando Lad McConkeys of the world, right? But if you're looking for a slot corner who can get downhill, set the line of scrimmage, put hands on a guy, and put them in the dirt, like, that's what Keontae Scott will do. Now, he is an older player, and I do think he is a true slot. So that right there keeps me from putting him any higher. And admittedly speaking, I might be a little bit too high on him. And again, we'll see what Chris Johnson and Julian Neal look like at the combine. If they knock it out of the park, pretty decent chance they might jump over Keontae Scott, because I don't think Scott's going to run a crazy 40 time. I think he'll probably run like a 4.48, 4.44, somewhere around that range, which would be a little faster than Chris Johnson and maybe even Julian Neal. Actually, definitely probably more than Julian Neal, but being that he is an older prospect and definitely more of a slot guy, that will knock him down a little bit. I just, look, there are certain players in a draft class that you just kind of gravitate towards, and when it came down to it, like watching him in the playoffs, watching him throughout the season, you kind of just fell in love with Miami a little bit. Sure, you may not like Carson Beck. Sure, you might think he's a dork, but if you like Miami football, which is really easy to do, with their physicality, with the way they just get downhill, put a hitting on people, make people feel them after the game, you can kind of see that with Keontae. I think he does have to improve his tackling technique for sure. I think he is smart in zone coverage. He knows when to get downhill. I think in man-on-man, I prefer him much in the slot. If you're going to kick him to the outside, he will struggle a little bit. There are times with that aggressiveness, that the want to just kind of put a hit on people or try and make a play does kind of hurt him a little bit. That eye discipline has to improve, and I think it definitely can. He is an older prospect, so we're not asking him to develop a ton more. It's just honestly just kind of clean up some of the issues you might have. Again, this is another guy kind of like Chandler Rivers, where it's like, I don't know if he's ever going to be a superstar, but with where I think the game is going in terms of what teams are looking for as sort of that slot slash like hybrid safety look. I mean, look at, for example, Brian Branch, Kyle Hamilton, what I would imagine Caleb Downs is going to do in the NFL. Like, teams are starting to look for these really physical guys that can move inside, outside, a little bit of safety. Kind of wonder if Keontae Scott can do that. But all in all, really solid slot corner prospect, and he's a really fun watch. Moving over to number 6, I have Brandon Cisse, the corner from South Carolina. So Cisse might be the project of the draft class, him and Julian Neal, but I think Julian Neal is a little bit farther along than Cisse. Is it Cisse or Cease? Someone please let me know in the comments. I think it is Cisse, but he is a raw player, right? You can see all the flashes. He is explosive. He has these super long arms. He's 6 foot 190. I think he looks a little bit bigger than that. Like, he's just really lengthy and can get his hands on people. He's strong too. Like, when he's in press man or just in press coverage in general, and he gets his mitts on you, dude, it puts a pop on you. It'll stutter you out a little bit. I think when you watch him in coverage, like, he is just so raw, especially in zone, that he almost just wins based off pure athleticism at times, which is a bit concerning. But, it kind of reminds me a little of Savon Ravel a little bit last year. Obviously, Ravel had the injury, and I think he was a bit further along in coverage. But Ravel would have some reps out there where he would get burnt, but that natural athleticism would just catch him right back into the play, and he'd get an interception or a pass breakup. I kind of sometimes see that with Cisse a little bit. I think he's good against the run. I think he is a willing participant in the run game. He's not the best tackler in the world, but I definitely think he's willing to get his head dirty a little bit, take some hits, put on some contact. I think he's got some really good feet. I think he's a really solid blitzer. Like, there's a lot to like about him. But look, in zone coverage, his anticipation, his just general awareness, he gets faked out a lot, knowing when to trigger downhill. Those things are all they're all massive work in progresses, right? So if you're going to take him round 1 or round 2, I expect there to be some issues in the first year, right? I'm a fan of Trevon Diggs, or I was a fan of Trevon Diggs. He was rough his rookie year, but he got better in year 2 and 3. I think that's kind of what you'll expect from a guy like Brandon Cisse. He needs to go to a team that is going to be patient with him, going to understand that he's going to have some mistakes on the field. Hopefully he can play next to a veteran that can kind of, get him along. And hopefully he plays for a team that doesn't have a ton of aspirations to be dominant defensively, right? Like, if he goes to a Buffalo, while a combination of him and Maxwell Harrison would be so much fun, the expectation for him would be much higher for, year 1. Whereas if he goes to a team like Las Vegas, for example, as like an early day 2 pick, I think that'd be a good spot for him, right? Maybe Arizona playing next to Will Johnson and some of those other guys, just throwing some ideas out there. But yeah, he's a fun prospect. Like, he's a ton of fun to watch. It's just, it can be a little frustrating at times because you get to see it. He relies a lot on that athleticism, and it got him through, and it got him to being a top 50 pick. We'll see if it'll make him into a NFL corner. I think that's the big thing. Moving to my number 5, I have Avion Terrell, the cornerback from Clemson. So Terrell was thought of as like one of the highest ranked prospects in this class coming into it. Same with TJ Parker, Cade Klubnik, Peter Woods, Antonio Williams. The only Clemson guy, the one guy in the group that has somehow raised his draft stock, is Blake Miller, the offensive tackle. It felt like everyone else at Clemson just did not have a great year, and I think that kind of does follow suit with Avion Terrell a little bit. Look, I still like Avion Terrell. I still think Avion Terrell is a really good football player. He's listed 5'11", 180 pounds. I honestly think he's going to come in a little shorter than 5'11", but regardless, though, if you're below that 6 foot threshold, some teams might have you off their board. Some teams might have you a little lower. I could see Terrell kind of being, somebody that if he doesn't have a great measurable at the combine, I could see a few teams kind of putting him down the board a little bit from a potential first rounder to maybe like a day 2 pick. So I'll have to wait and see on that one. Again, I think Avion Terrell has like really good footage, and he's been doing this for quite some time now. Like, he's been a rock solid starter at Clemson for multiple years. You can see this is via PFF. I mean, look, the 77.0 in 23, 82.3 in 24, 83.5 in 25. He's just a rock solid corner, man. And, you know, he has played a lot of outside corner at Clemson. I do think in the NFL, he will probably be asked with that size again, unless he, you know, maybe measures in a little bit more favorably. I wonder if he'll be asked to play a bit more on the slot, in which I think he could definitely excel. I think he's got really good anticipation. He knows when to trigger downhill. He's always in phase with receivers. He's got great fluidity. He's got great change of direction. He can play inside and outside. I love the fact that despite being a smaller guy, he is still physical. He will still try to, you know, give these receivers a hard time off the line of scrimmage, and he will be a willing participant in the run game. He's one of the best peanut Tillman punchers in this class. Him and Anthony Hill, the linebacker from Texas. You see the flag right there. Hook him, baby. But yeah, those guys just, man, just always trying to get that ball dislodged. And, you know, there'd be some teams out there. I think Chicago would love this guy. Like, Chicago might have some secondary needs. You know, last year they were always trying to force turnovers. I think Terrell would be a great fit for them. Really, his issues is just the simple fact that he's an undersized corner. Like, he is 5'11", maybe more like 5'10". I don't think he really has the best play strength. I think tackling, while he tries to tackle, just because he is a smaller guy, there are some general limitations, and that's honestly my major flaw with him. I do think in terms of just pure straight up coverage, he's one of the best in this class, right? He can stay attached with you in man. You know, like, he will have a couple holding penalties here and there at the NFL level, because you will see when a drag route or a crossing route gets in front of him, he starts to get a little grabby, but, you know, it's every single corner. I'm not too pissed about that. But in zone coverage, he's just really solid, man. And I think, look, some teams are going to look at him, and they're going to see an undersized corner, and they're going to say, you know what, I think we can wait till day 2. Whereas other teams are going to look at him and say he's been a multiple-year starter at Clemson. His brother's already in the NFL. That would be A.J. Terrell in Atlanta. So we got a guy who has NFL experience because of his brother. So he should end up being a good veteran, a good culture fit, because his brother is a good culture fit in Atlanta. So you'd assume Avion, with that experience at Clemson, having the brother lineage, should be good for him. And he's got really good tape. I think if teams could just kind of overlook the size element of him, and, you know, I think he is somebody that you try him out at outside corner, see if it works. If not, which I think it will, but if not, try him at a slot corner and see if he'll work there. I think he just has that level of versatility, and that's honestly what makes me excited about him. I think there's some better corners in this class in terms of being a bit more of the full package, but Avion Terrell, like, yeah, I think gets a lot of criticism from a lot of people, but I think he's just a good football player. I mean, 2025 was not as good as 2024. Still thought 2025 was not bad at all. Moving over to my cornerback 4, we got Colton Hood. So Colton Hood was at the Senior Bowl, and kind of like every single corner there was very kind of up and down. I think of the upper echelon corners that were there, I thought that he had himself a pretty solid time there. Like, I never felt like Colton Hood looked outclassed or, you know, got embarrassed out there in the field. I thought he was good for the most part. Made a couple nice plays. He didn't stand out a ton, but again, for a corner, it's very difficult to stand out at the Senior Bowl. Look, if it was me, I just wouldn't go to the Senior Bowl if I was a corner, unless I had to, like, drastically improve my draft stock, like Bud Clark, the safety, did from TCU. But, like, did any of the corners really help their draft stock a ton in the Senior Bowl? Not really. It's just not a great camp for them, if I'm being honest with you. But anyways, Colton Hood is 6 foot, 195 pounds, transferred to Tennessee. It was supposed to be him and Jermon McCoy, which we'll get to here in a second, which actually would have been a fun duo, but it just didn't work out. McCoy had the injury, so Colton Hood kind of became that CB1. And look, Tennessee's defense was horrendous this year. Look, I'll say this about Tennessee's defense. They had so much talent on that side of the ball, and I just felt like whoever the defensive coordinator was last year, I don't know if I think he got fired, it got replaced. I think that's the right thing for that team, because there were so many guys out there at the Senior Bowl and in this year's class, and I'm like, how is this Tennessee defense that bad? Like, Joshua Josephs, to me, like, why is he somebody that had like 300 snaps this year? That should be somebody that's 500 to 600. It was baffling to me. I thought that defense way underperformed. So Tennessee fans, if you're listening, hopefully next year should be a little better. It's a shame, too, because you had some talent on that side. But look, Colton Hood had a really good year. This is his big breakout year. He's had some good years in the past, but this was really the big breakout year. This was the year that got him into being a potential first or second round pick. 6 foot 195, great play recognition, good closing speed. He is physical. He's not afraid to get his nose dirty. He processes the field very well. I've seen some people say he's confident, which is a good thing. And when I'm watching this film, I do see a player that doesn't lack confidence, right? He will definitely, try to undercut routes. He's not afraid to get his nose dirty a little bit. When that ball is in the air, he doesn't panic too much. He's confident in his abilities, confident in his technique, and that's what you want to see. You don't want a corner out there. And there's a player at Mississippi State, Kelly Jones, who I loved a ton. I thought he might be coming out in this class. He did not, but I like the fact that he was very confident with the ball in the air. You kind of get that with Colton Hood a little bit here. Now, there are some times where he needs to trust his eyes a little bit more. He's got some general inconsistencies with that. He's not the best in the line of scrimmage. I think that's something that can definitely be improved upon. And he's not the best tackler. So he's got some couple little flaws to him. I think Colton Hood will enter the league as a really good CB2. And I don't know if he'll ever be a great CB1, but I think he can be a serviceable CB1. If Denver doesn't trust Jahdae Barron to step into another role, I think that Colton Hood on that unit with him, Surtain, and then Barron as your slot, or you bring back McMillan and you replace Riley Moss with Colton Hood, I think that would be an excellent fit. Just want to throw that little name out there for you guys. I think he's a back of round 1, early round 2 type of guy. I will say Daniel Jeremiah has a lot more faith in Colton Hood. He has him like a mid first round pick. So I could see it, man. I think if teams prioritize corner in this class, Colton Hood is somebody that definitely should see his draft stock rise for sure. Moving into my top 3, at my number 3, I have Keith Abney, the Arizona State corner. So Keith Abney is somebody that you either really love or you just like, right? Like I know, for example, Broshmo, who we had on my podcast a few days ago, by the way, 1st and 10, you see it, link in the description, go check it out. We had him on for a mock draft. He loves Keith Abney, and I can understand why. But there are some people who are a little bit more cold on Keith. They think he's a good prospect, not a great prospect. So you either think he's great or you think he's just a good prospect. And I kind of wonder if there's going to be that same sort of sentiment in the NFL where some teams are going to have him as like a top 20 prospect and others might have him as like a top 35, top 40 prospect. So if he goes early or middle of round 1, I think that sentiment of like some are way higher on him might be a little bit true. Now he's 6 foot 190. Again, we have a lot of corners here who are 6 foot. In fact, I think every corner not named Rivers, Avion Terrell, and Julian Neal are 6 foot. We'll see if that kind of, changes at the combine, but we got a lot of 6 foot guys here. We'll get exact measurables at the combine. 6 foot 190, kind of a typical build in this class. There are some reps on film where he just smothers guys, where you can see his IQ, his anticipation. It's like you can tell this guy was living and breathing film that week and just runs the routes better than the receivers. It is awesome to watch. He's got some of the best footwork in this class. I think he's functional in both man and zone coverage. I think he's a good run defender too. He puts his nose in there, willing to make plays. Not the best tackler in the world. There's some, like, Julian Neal's a better tackler, but I still think he's a good tackler in general. I think he will be used on special teams. I think he'll be, I don't know if he'll be a CB1 for a lot of teams, but as a CB2, like, he will be really, really good. Where you're going to see some people kind of dislike him a little bit is the simple fact that he is somebody that doesn't have the best hip transitions, which hip transitions are important because you want to be able to go from back pedal, back pedal, back pedal. Oh, he's running a go route. Let me transition to, sprinting with him. He is a little bit slower in that regard. But I will say, I kind of think that's a bit overrated. I know I'm not a corner. I'm just a fat dude in a chair. I'm not that fat, but I'll say I'm fat today. I'm just a fat dude in a chair who's just sitting here and definitely cannot transition like Keith Abney. That's for damn sure. But I'm just not that worried about it. Like, I think if a team gets him and realizes, hey, he's a really good football player with good footwork, knows how to diagnose routes, knows how to break on them, knows how to create turnovers, may not be the greatest athlete in the world. Let's put him in situations where we build our game plan kind of around this guy's skill set in the secondary. And that's really where you're going to see this guy thrive. I think he's just a really, really good football player that has upside to be a CB1 on your team. I think will be more than likely a really good CB2. I think there's maybe 2 guys in this class that I can think of being immediate day 1 cornerback 1 options. I think the rest are cornerback 2 options, and you kind of see if they can develop into being your CB1. That's my mindset on Keith Abney. I think he's a mid to late round 1 pick. I think he'll probably get drafted lower than some other guys on this board. Like, I think Colton Hood might be drafted higher. Same with Terrell. I think Abney is a better football player, though. There are concerns here for sure. Not the best athlete. The combine will do him either justice or kill his draft stock. If he goes to the combine, looks stiff during drills, doesn't run a good 40, that could hurt him drastically. If he looks good at the drills and he looks good in the 40, he might be the third corner off the board. I think it's a possibility. But in my top two, you already know who they are. At number 2, Jermon McCoy. So I'll say this, if Jermon McCoy was healthy this year and replicated his 2024 season in 2025, he would have been my clear-cut CB1. But that's not the reality of the situation, right? This year, he did tear his ACL. This was all the way back well over a year ago at this point. So he should be 100%. He will be able to go hopefully for the combine and things like that. We didn't get to see him in 2025, which was a shame because 2024 was such a productive and fun year from this guy that it was a shame we didn't get to see him really put it all together in 2025. Now, he's a very aggressive corner with great ball skills, great timing in zone coverage, knows how to diagnose routes, great route recognition, very aggressive, good press man corner. He is 6 foot. He's 193. So, there could be some concerns about his frame a little bit. As with all these 6 foot corners, I think ideally you get 6'1", 6'2" guys, but, who cares at this point? Good fluid hips. He's not like the greatest athlete in the world. Like, his long speed is not incredible. He's not the most explosive guy. And we're going to have to see him look how he looks after this injury. I will say this. There are some guys who tear their ACL and within 6 months, they look better or about the same person prior to the injury. There are other people, though, where they have an ACL injury, they have a knee injury, and they never look the same. They will forever look like a discounted version of what they once were. And the fact that we don't have that 2025 film on Jermon McCoy, it makes him a really risky bet, right? Because even if he looks good at the combine, even if he looks good at his pro day, it's not live reps, right? It's not him having to be explosive, having to trigger downhill and actually make tackles and make plays midair in the NFL. Because if he goes out there at the Senior Bowl or not the Senior Bowl, his pro day and the combine and looks great, there will still be the questions and concerns of like, can he do that in an actual game? When he goes out there and has to jump to tip a pass, is he going to have that same level of explosiveness to make that play? In addition to that, is he going to re-injure himself? That is a concern. Like, that's a legit concern that a lot of teams will have. But if teams feel like, hey, the 2024 film is that impressive, which I thought it was very good, like very, very good, the best in this class, and we think that he is fine after this injury, and we think we can take a swing on him to be our cornerback 1, then I'm all for it. I think he's got CB1 upside. I think he looks impressive on film. So physical, so intense, such a great playmaker with the ball in the air. He has upside to be a really, really, really good corner in the NFL. The question will just come down to, are you okay taking a risk on a guy that did not play last year and had that ACL injury? So those are concerns, but I'm not generally too concerned about it. If he looks good at the Senior Bowl, I keep saying Senior Bowl. If he looks good at the Combine and Pro Day, I think that will lessen the concern. Now, if he goes to the Senior Bowl, I keep saying Senior Bowl. If he goes to the Combine and goes to his Pro Day and runs a bad 40 and looks like he's still hurting a little bit, you might see him drop to, I don't even want to know, day 2, maybe even day 3. I'm not thinking day 3, but like day 2, if he doesn't look right, which would be a shame in a lot of different ways. Like, if he doesn't look right, then don't perform at the Combine or Pro Day. Just leave it up and for speculation. But if he does actually perform and looks bad, boy, I wonder where he'll go. But we'll have to update these rankings potentially after the Combine, so we'll see. Now, before we get into my number 1, I do want to hand out just a couple quick honorable mentions, just really briefly. D'Angelo Ponds, I heavily considered, but that 5'9" stature is going to make it tough to thrive in the NFL. He's got a lot going for him. We'll see, what team takes a risk on him and what system they put him in. Manny Muhammad, Texas corner. Think he's really good in zone. I thought this year he was good. I don't know if he's flashy enough to make it into my top 50 or top 70, but he is somebody that I think should be taken in like round 3 or round 4. Has upside to be a good cornerback 2 in the NFL. Dalen Everett has got great range, good size, great upside, but there are some other corners here on the list that have a similar profile that I just liked more. Devin Moore from Florida, like really heavily considered him in my top 10. He's probably going to move up inside my top 10 at the Combine. Special athlete with great coverage skills. He's also a bigger guy too, 6'3", 195. He's just a little bit light for me, and I want to see how he looks at the Combine and whatnot. But yeah, a lot to like about his game for sure. Davison Igbinosun had a good year. Hezekiah Masses and Will Lee all were considered on this list. Did not make it though. Let's get into my number 1. But of course, at my number 1, I have Mansour Delane, the LSU corner. So Delane is such a fun prospect to think about because if you watched him these past few years, boy, he was bad last year, like straight up bad. You can see the numbers here this year, just unbelievable year. But last year, he had 7 touchdowns, 570 yards, did have 4 interceptions, give him his flowers, but not a great year. 2023, I thought he was pretty sharp, and I was pretty excited about 2024. 2024 was a massive letdown. He now entered in LSU in 2025 and turned things around. Now, that does leave you a little bit concerned in some ways, but also kind of like, I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, going from Virginia Tech to LSU, that's obviously a massive upgrade in talent that is around you. And you just have to kind of wonder, like, did that scheme, did that talent around you help you elevate your game? Or was it just simply that you just had the year, right? And that 2024 was just a fluky year. And maybe it's the opposite, where 2024 Virginia Tech's talent was just that bad that it put more on Mansour's plate and he just didn't have a great year. Like, it's totally possible, but he had such a really unbelievable year at LSU this year. Like, it was that impressive. Like, he is probably gonna be a top 15 pick, and I think rightfully so because of how good he looked. So from a physical perspective, he is 6 foot 190. He doesn't have the longest arms in the world, which again, some teams will look at that and, you know, have that as a bit of a con. I do think it's a concern not having that great size, because again, you're going to be matched up with big dudes in the NFL. DK Metcalf, George Pickens, AJ Brown, Justin Jefferson, long, slender, rangy guys that can make plays in the football. Him being a little bit lighter size, smaller guy, not the greatest wingspan, bit concerning, but in coverage, he is elite. Great hip fluidity, really solid athlete, great anticipation, great productivity this year. Did not have a single penalty this year either. You know, what was it, a 27.5 passer rating this year given up against SEC opponents? Just unbelievable the year he had. He's got great hips, good fluidity, moves like you want a corner to move. I think he's got versatility to play inside and outside too. If, you know, that side over aggressive in times, that's just kind of the nature of the beast. But I just feel like there's so much to like about Mansour Delane that he's a top 5, top 10 pick. If the Dallas Cowboys can get him at 12, he'll be their pick. If the Dolphins get him at 11, if the Rams can get him at 13, I don't see him still being on the board when the Rams pick is up. If he's still on the board, the latest he goes is 13. The earliest he goes, I think, is Washington at 7. I think Washington very well could take him at 7. And honestly, like, there's a world where he does go top 5. I think it's a bit unrealistic, but with the Washington Commanders pick, they need corner. I think Mansour could easily be the pick there. He's definitely not making it outside the top 13. He is a really awesome football player that had an incredible year. And yeah. All right, but you guys let me know in the comment section below. What do you disagree with? What do you agree with in my list? And if you enjoyed, hit that like and subscribe button. And I love you guys. Peace.